kind of want to take a different direction in the conversation and talk a bit more about like, okay, so when you have time off and you've taken your time off and you chilled and you're studying Japanese and you also took a break from Japanese, which you shouldn't have done, but you did. It's okay because it happens, and I do it all the time. I'm not a good example for studying, but I've made it. So that's where we're getting at. How do you make it? How do you still succeed even when you do, break your streak for a couple of days because you just needed a break and life happened? Well, you start again. You don't beat yourself over the head for having taken a break. It's okay. You just start again and you be consistent going forward. And if you're using an SRS system, sometimes it can be discouraging because you might come back and have 1,000 cards. So what do you do when you come back from your break and you have 1,000 cards?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you.
All right. Well, the first thing to note is that you have not forgotten as much as your flashcards think you have.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned this many times. I think if you read about my story, I did quit studying Japanese for a couple of years. I think between 2010 and 2012, I didn't study basically at all. And then I came back to study Japanese, and I had 4,000 flashcards that I had not done for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as you can imagine, was kind of stressful for me.
That is many.
And what I did was I just went through and just selected good, which would be like the smiley face on our cards for every single one. I looked at them. I didn't actually grade myself at all on whether or not I remember. I read it and click good. Sometimes I didn't even read it, just click good. And I did that. I couldn't even do it all in one day just because there's so many cards. Even not studying them, it took me several days to get through all 4,000 that way.
Yep.
And then after doing that, I was surprised to find out that even these cards that were 2 years old, that supposedly I should have studied, after a couple of weeks or months sometimes, I hadn't forgotten everything. I had forgotten a lot, but I hadn't forgotten everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually sort of just settled back into my flashcards without much problem.
Mm-hmm.
Without much trouble. And then that particular experience sort of gave me a new perspective on flashcards. I've mentioned this like in almost every episode we've done of this.
Yep.
But flashcards are, on the one hand, they're good for helping you remember stuff, but I think more important is that they just make you feel better about the fact that you are making progress, because I didn't feel like I was making progress at all for so long with Japanese. But then I could look at my flashcards and be like, but it says like I have all these words that I learned, so I must be making progress because it says that I have, even if I feel like I'm going backwards or standing still.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, a good takeaway from that. And then based on that, I think this is a problem we need to solve in NativShark. I don't want our students to be getting 4,000 flashcards if they take a break for 2 years.
Yeah.
Because it sends the wrong message.
Right.
Because you see 4,000 flashcards and you don't think like, oh, if I just click smiley face on all of them, I'll be fine, which is the case. But you're not going to feel like that if you log in and see 4,000 flashcards do.
Yeah. So I feel like, okay, well, two things. One, if you are currently using NativShark and you did you took a break over the holiday and you do have like 500 to 1,000 cards, you can click the smiley face, go through all of them, and just start on the path again. You'll be completely fine. So I just want to say that if you are currently using NativShark, you're okay. Smiley face, get back on the train, you're good. But going forward, how do we make it such that the system doesn't require you to do that? Because right now, we know that you'll be fine, but you don't feel that way, and I get that because Nico and I have both been there. On that side of things, it's like, oh no, well, I guess maybe do I restart the whole thing? So what can we do? That's the question here. And some sort of flashcard avalanche protection system needs to be in place, and like a recovery system or something, right? So it's like you press a button and then you have a shark shoveling the snow, and then there you go. It does it for you.
Yeah.
It sets things off and it's like, hey, it's all good. You're gonna be fine. That's essentially that's kind of it, really.
Yeah, I think so.
That'd do
So
it.
we just need a nice way, and I think having a shark shovel snow sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, like I want a little animation.
Yeah, just oh no, there's an avalanche. Let's get this snow out of here, and then it
Yeah,
gets out of here for us.
right. And then you can carry on. This is kind of relating to why I have a complicated relationship with the idea of including retention rates related to the flashcard system. Because like some flashcard systems, right, they draw like a graph for your supposed retention rate, and it's all it's based on is your answers to your flashcards. I feel like that's never accurate to what your brain is actually retaining, because if you did a retention rate graph and then you stopped for 2 years and you came back, it's going to be 0. It's like you didn't retain hardly anything, or it's going to be really bad because it's going to it's not good 0, but it's going to be
I mean it can be 0 is what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's going to be not good. It's not going to look good. And so on this notion of things that like help you study, there's this balance between what is a number, a stat, a tool, a function, a feature that genuinely helps you study, and what is one that can cause distraction, undue stress, or like when you think it's a good thing, but it might not actually be a good thing. And where is that line? And I don't entirely know, but
yeah,
I was just thinking about retention rates over the holiday a bit, and then I think I saw someone put a feature request for one. And so that had me thinking about it seriously, like, okay, so if there is some interest in retention rates, why do we not have a retention rate graph? You know what I mean? And should we? And I kind of lead towards we shouldn't have one, because what benefit does it really give? You know? What do you think?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you used Anki for a really long time. They give you a lot of stats. Like, how often did you look at them? Did you find any of them useful specifically? You know?
The only stat I ever looked at in Anki was the pie chart of new, learned, and mature cards.
Yeah.
That's all I cared about. Because the other ones I always thought were kind of meaningless. I looked at them sometimes, but I didn't really care. I just wanted to see how many words do I know? How many am I learning? How many do I have left to learn based on the decks that I've created so far?
Right.
And then the counter to that is, well, you had like an avalanche, for example. So you had these 4,000 cards. You selected good on all of them. So a bunch of them probably got moved to mature, or they were still in learn, even though you had technically forgotten them. And you think, what about that? And well, you're going to see the card again. And if you're using a system that has +1 like NativShark, then even if the card got archived, you would see a sentence that contains the target concept of that card anyway, eventually. And you can just select sad face when that happens. Even if you did the smiley face on all the cards, like just spammed through them, and you get really worried about all these cards that you actually don't remember at all, that now you're saying you did remember them. But it's not, if the cards will come back. And maybe the algorithm now thinks that you need 3 months to see that card again, when actually you need to see it tomorrow. But it doesn't matter if you see it 3 months from now. It only matters if you're going to quit studying Japanese, a few months from now, in which case you probably shouldn't even be using NativShark or studying in the first place.
Right.
Because you should be studying, you should be looking at the long term. And in the long term, you're going to see it again.
Yep.
Even if it got archived and it didn't show up in another card for some reason, maybe it's an obscure term, although in that case it probably wouldn't show up in the core studies anyway, but you'll see it eventually in the real world.
Yeah.
You can make a custom flashcard for it. Like it always comes back, the content. So it doesn't matter if you forget it or archive it, or if it has a 6-month interval when actually you should see it tomorrow, because you're going to see it eventually, and that's all that matters.
Which of course comes back to what we've said many times on the podcast, is what the most important success signal is not giving up. And to get to back to that point of you saying you looked at the pie chart, and I think there is value in the pie chart, and why that's the case is because it's what matters is not giving up. So this means time. So what you want to look at is trends over time, and trends over time is like, is the pie chart going down? Like, am I learning more cards? Am I learning more words, more things? Like, is that number going up? Is this continuing? Like, things like retention or percent correct, they're like micro. They're like right now. And the other thing is, the algorithm is not, at least for the foreseeable future, will never be perfect to what you actually know in your mind. No matter what, no matter how we program an algorithm, there's still going to be some difference. But that's fine because it doesn't matter. So if you were to worry too much about percent correct, it's like, well, what do you mean percent correct? It's like it doesn't correct or not correct. There is no correct or not correct. You know what I mean? Because what that percent correct comes from is you pressing like if you forgot or something like that. But that doesn't mean that you necessarily completely forgot that thing if you stay at it over time, right?
Yeah.
So that
also it's just based on what you selected, not what you actually got correct.
That's right. Exactly. It's not your literal brain.
Mine was always like 98% correct because I almost never selected forget.
Same.
Because I didn't want the card coming back just because I didn't really remember it all that well. Like I'll see it again if I click correct, and I'll get it eventually, and it'll show up in other sentences. So yeah, that's another reason I didn't check the percentage correct, is because it would always say like 97, 98%. Because I only clicked forget if I thought, first of all, I don't remember this at all. Second, I want to know and remember this now, like quickly. I want to be able to use this word next week.
Yeah.
But if it's a word that like I just want to recognize it eventually, then yeah, just smiley face, whatever.
So it's like I think the thing that we're getting at here is we need to reframe in our minds what is like correct and not correct. Like there isn't correct and not correct. Do you know what I'm getting at here? It's like we shouldn't be thinking of it as this is correct, this is not correct. I forgot, I didn't forget, because it's consistency, trending over time, and repetition that makes things actually stick. Like where's there room for it's not a binary correct or not correct. You know what I'm saying here? It's like it's a variable.
Disparity between each person on what they think it means to say correct or forgot anyway. It's part of the reason we switched the faces.
Right.